attributed to poor tax governance and a lack of compliance measures. Our guest tonight, Mr. Moses Kajubi, Commissioner in charge of domestic taxes at the Uganda Revenue Authority. Shortly, you'll be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Mr. Kajubi, some people say, can you give us a breakdown of where we get most of our taxes?
We have mainly two tax heads: the customs taxes, which contribute about 48% of our total tax collection, and the domestic taxes, which contribute the other 52%. Now, when you go down to the domestic taxes, we have what we call the direct taxes, which include income tax, pay as you earn, and withholding taxes paid at various levels. These give us an estimate of about 26% of the 52.
Yes.
Then you go to the indirect taxes, which is VAT and excise duty. These bring in about 22% of the other 52.
Yes.
And then we have what we call non-tax revenues. This is stamp duty, fees and licenses on motor vehicles, driving permits. These give you about 4%, and that's how you make up this tax contribution.
Stamp duties, driving permits, or
licenses,
yes,
motor vehicle registrations when you're registering motor vehicles. Basically, the fees and licenses will give you about 4% of that.
And if you are to expand the tax base, which areas would you expand to?
We are looking at both the direct taxes, that is the income tax, and the VAT area.
Yeah.
Income tax, like we've already demonstrated, that there are people who are economically active, earning a lot of money, but they have not been paying tax. Basically, by dodging, I transact in cash, I keep my money in my bedroom, and I move it from the bedroom to buy or sell. That is the first category. We are trying to make sure that we move in that area and bring them on board. We have also improved the systems that collect information to ensure that we are now auditing you from an angle of information rather than an angle of lack of information. So we come to you today and tell you, you have transacted X, Y, Z, and by virtue of this, you should declare this. But what we are seeing you declare is 1 and 2. In the past, we used to come to you and say, give us the records we want to audit, and we'll start from zero. We now come from an informed angle. So we think income taxes have got big potential for growth. I mentioned the indirect taxes, VAT especially, has been doing poorly. Partly because of the large exemption list that we have in the law, but the other one is non-compliance. You've seen Ugandans sell to you something, they don't give you a receipt or an invoice.
They give you another, they ask you how much you want to be written
on the receipt.
On the receipt.
And when you say I don't want it, they don't write it. Or they can write something bigger or smaller. But at times they issue the receipts and divide by 2. And say, for a taxman, I'll give him after dividing by 2.
Right.
We now want to zero in that area.
How do you do it?
By linking what you're selling to the person you sold to. When you sell, I'll give an example, 90 FM. If you run an advert for Bank of Uganda,
yes,
certainly you will invoice them the rightful amount.
True.
You will think that that's the end of the story. But Bank of Uganda, on the other hand, keeps their records, and they are sending us that record using the e-tax system. Now we will compare your sales to Bank of Uganda, to Standard Chartered Bank, and all other clients, and try to reconstruct your financial statements. Now we come to you with that information. Now we are finding quite a number of good revelations there.
And then you begin to fumble.
Then you have to,
because you have very clear evidence against you.
Against you.
You begin to shake like a leaf.
True. Those are the areas we are looking at to practically be able to expand.
You know, someone said in the press today that I think they were following up water, people who take water fraudulently.
Yes.
And they said it seems to be a group of rich people. They have the same arguments, the same connections underground, and they have the same arguments. When you ask them, the answer they say, so they thought their club coaches them. I don't know whether that is true. That is something that came. Let's talk about something else here. The biggest 100 taxpayers. You used to publish that list. You don't publish it anymore. What happened?
We have the list, and I don't know whether it's by omission or commission that is not being published. But we
the
have
top 100 taxpayers. I think you don't publish for about 3 or 4 years now.
We used to publicize the top 1,000 taxpayers.
Yes.
The top 1,000 taxpayers. I may need to check with our systems to find out, but practically speaking, I think we have the list and we know the people. We know the people in that category.
Is it a fair taxation system? Is everybody paying taxes, or are we relying on a few people?
I would say for now we are relying on a few people, and that's why I believe we have scope to expand our collections without necessarily adding on more tax types or increasing the rate. If I gave you the numbers, we seem to be getting a lot of money from these big, large taxpayers and from employees.
Pay as you earn.
Pay as you earn. The employees are playing ball and they are paying their taxes. We also have the multinational, the big companies and the medium taxpayers. They are also doing well. But when you move from that category, we are finding serious cases of non-compliance. And practically speaking, some of these interventions are touching them or beginning to touch them. And that's why we need to explain to the whole nation.
All right. So let's underline a few things here. 1, at the URA, no new taxes. 2, no new tax raises.
True.
And then 3, the big thing, the buzzword right now, is wealth is going to declare its owners.
You're right. You're right.
You drive past a large farm somewhere in Nakasongola, then you begin to inquire who owns it. You trace them to Kampala, then you begin to ask them how they got that money.
No.
In the long term.
In the long term. In the long term. In the long time, we will be able to ask those kinds of questions. But before we get there, we are using the information that is readily available to us.
Do the traders pay tax as well?
The traders, that is another group of people that pay their import duties very well. When they get to the local domestic taxes, I think there's room for improvement in that category.
Is the URA ready for the East African community?
URA is ready for the East African community. As a matter of fact, in 2005, when we got the customs union, that's when we had to make big changes to make sure that URA is ready. We've successfully run the customs union for the last 5-6 years, and what we are adding on now is something that is easier than implementing the union in 2005.
That's right. Of course, 2 of the 4 pillars have been met. We are left with the Monetary Union and the Political Federation.
And the
Customs Union and the first one, the Common Market Protocol, those have been
achieved.
Crossed. 2 out of us, so 50% we've achieved. We're moving to the 3rd one, which is supposed to come next year.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit, Mr. Kajubi, about the tax measures in the budget. The number of measures were announced during the reading of the national budget, including removing duty on sugar, handholds, among others. Now, some people thought this would reduce the prices of these commodities, but prices have still simply gone up. As soon as you reduce taxes, sugar prices went up. Some people might say maybe they should not have raised the taxes. Something happened after they removed the taxes, prices went up.
Yeah. Let me explain some of this thing about the sugar prices. Of course, we had situations where people tried to misform the country that is taxes causing the prices to go up. I'm so glad that our political leadership stood firm and explained to the people that the taxes you're talking about are not the cause for the high rises. There is something that has happened in the international economy, and we are open, we have open borders, and there are some other things that are happening which are causing the prices to go up. I'll give you an example of fuel prices. Our leadership explained that the prices on the international market have gone up, but the people who at times cannot explain these things will quickly say the taxes are high, the taxes are high. And that wasn't the case. Now, the interventions such as reduction in taxes, if it was true they were the cause of the high prices, would have resulted into lower prices thereafter. But that wasn't the case. When I go to sugar, I'll tell you what has been happening is demand exceeding supply because the manufacturers of sugar went into routine maintenance.
2 factories were closed at the same time.
Actually, 3 almost closed at the same time. The first 2 closed between May and June. Then there's a 3rd one that closed immediately thereafter. Which
is something for the planners to look at. You can't allow such a thing to happen. 3 factories closing at the same time.
At the same time. And that practically caused what we would call shortfalls in supply.
True.
When supply is low, then the prices will go up. Nothing to do with the tax on the sugar. The other thing that we need some of our traders to explain is the big margins that they are trying to put on the sugar. When you go to a sugar factory, they will tell you our X factory price is 2,140 shillings per kilo. When you go to a big supermarket like ShopRite and Uchumi, they will tell you our prices are 2,800.
That's 700 shillings.
700 shillings gap. But you find other people saying our prices are 4,000 shillings in Kampala.
Profiteering.
That is profiteering, taking advantage of the population.
Well, this is Spectrum Radio, and you can call in now 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from.
Hello.
Yes, your name?
This is Mkwa John Stephen from Kazo.
John, yes?
I wanted to ask Mr. Kajubi about the tax exemption. I understand that you also give tax exemption to investors. Now, for how long does it take for an investor to be tax exempted? Because if he's going to be in Uganda for 20 years, for how long will it take? Now, the person who exports about 80% of the good, what if the person declines in about 2 years from the time he was exporting 80%? What happens after? And then, Mr. Kajubi, I also wanted you to highlight about the speculations about the graduate tax that is being speculated in the public, that the graduate tax is coming soon. Can you kindly tell us about that?
All right. Spectrum, hello? Hello? You're live on Spectrum, your name? Okay, we'll move to the next caller. Spectrum, hello? Hello?
Hello?
Your name, sir?
Yeah, my name is David.
Yes?
I'm calling from Bokoto, and I must thank you for this very good program this evening. Tax base has said to expand because of some corrupt activities that are being experienced in this country. For example, you can't collect huge sums of money in Ugandan. A lot of money a day without giving out receipts, no record on the ground. Here, Mr. Kajubi, I do tax this man, and you very well know that this money is being collected. There are no receipts given. There is no, because tax is collected on the basis of information. A receipt on the basis of a receipt. So you can come in and assess the taxes. How really do you accept to collect such a huge billions of money year, without collecting it? In conclusion, we have to in conclusion, you see, some leaders in this country have got to run businesses under this base. They have given tax holidays to their agents who are running their businesses, and this one is killing the economy of the country. I thank you this evening.
Thank you, David in Bukota. Spectrum, hello? Hello? Okay. Yes, some information that just came in.
Yes.
A bag of sugar, 50 kilos. Retail in Chikuba is 190,000 shillings, among other issues.
Okay.
Can you respond to some of this?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll quickly go through the questions, and thank you, callers, for these good questions. Tax exemption, I'll begin with that. For how long does it go on? It's an exemption available to every Ugandan who meets this criteria. It's not available to a few. And an example is the 80%. If you export 80% of your produce, you should have this exemption as long as you make 80% of your production exported. Should you go below 80%, then you don't qualify to be exempt. In that year, you will pay tax.
And this is this exemption is for 100%. Even the 20% that you send locally, you don't pay tax.
You don't pay tax on it.
Yes.
But you will lose the exemption if you go below the 80%.
For how long? It could be a season, 3 months.
It could be no. We use annual production.
An annual basis.
Yeah, we don't monitor on a monthly basis. But
okay.
On annual basis, if we look at your exports and your production and it's below 80%, you lose the exemption, irrespective of who you are. Therefore, you have the exemption as long as you still fulfill what was put in the law.
G-tax.
Graduated tax. I would request not to comment on this. It's a local government tax. It's not. It's a local government tax. And as far as we are concerned now, we've not had proper briefs from government on the policy direction. It will be speculative of me to make any comment as to whether GTAX is coming back or it's not coming back.
UTODA tax, when will it come?
Now, UTODA, I think it's unfortunate, and this is where I came from.
Maybe we should simply call it UTODA tax. They collect a lot of money from that place.
I don't know what name they give it. They at times call it welfare or something. But we are saying, let us be accountable. If you want the informal sector to go away, what UTODA does to collect money and not issue receipt is the beginning of the informality of the Ugandan economy. And we condemn it in the strongest terms possible. At times they use it to hide the income they are earning, not to pay tax. And that's why what we are doing now is helping to fish out those people. If you never issue the receipt, you will certainly end up buying a 1 billion property in Makerere or building a big hostel.
But now you're going to find them up.
So that's how we are finding them out.
As they inspect their land, you show up
and say, look, guy,
want to talk to you, take
we
them
want to
aside.
talk to you. Did you pay tax? And that's when you discover he collected cash and never paid tax. But we condemn this kind of activity, and we want to work with everybody to see that we bring the informal sector.
And so you're going to catch all of them?
It may not be all of them,
Most
but
of
the
them.
journey has begun. And we normally say a journey of 1,000 kilometers begins with the first day.
That's the saying of the Chinese. And many of them have large pot bellies. Not all of them who have pot bellies are tax evaders, but many of those tax evaders. Let's talk about something else, the economic crisis and taxation. There have been a lot of demands from Ugandans saying should suspend taxes on some commodities, fuel and other things. Why don't you do that so prices come down?
We have to look at a few things. The first thing that you have to look at is the ability of government to deliver services. All of us in Uganda need services that can only be delivered by government. Whatever you want to say, you cannot deliver national security to yourself. You cannot build roads for yourselves. You may pay school fees for your children, but we have so many people out there who actually need to be educated. We must get the civil service to work, the police system to work. All this needs money. And when you get rid of taxes, you should first say, I'm ready not to receive any service from government. But if you're not ready to say, I'm stopping services from government, then you cannot stop taxation. At times, people say taxation is what we have to go through to be civilized. Therefore, reduction of taxes will mean not being able to support the government we have cherished and the government we've chosen to deliver common services that cannot be delivered individually.
So you don't expect any tax reductions. You're not raising them, you're not introducing new taxes, but the ones that we have will stay.
The ones we have will stay, and let us work together to get as many people into the tax bracket. And when we get all those into the tax bracket, then we can have a different debate or discussion.
And you reduce taxes on sugar. You said you cut it by 50%,
True.
Which meant 25 shillings for a kilo.
That's true.
It doesn't really help the consumer because there's nothing you're going to use 25 shillings for.
That is
But
true.
you lost 87 billion shillings. I think.
Yes, that is true. We lost all that kind of money, which would have been able to build so many kilometers of a road.
So it's a lose-lose
It's a
situation.
lose-lose situation and not a win-win situation.
Are you satisfied in URA with the tax structures that you have?
Currently, we are practically running a good system. Our tax structures are as recent as 1997. Many people are coming to Uganda to look at our tax structures, and we have something to export in terms of systems and structures. I believe we have a good structure. What we need to work on are the things around the tax structure to ensure they respond to the structure we practically are running.
What kind of things? Chasing after those pot-bellied men who don't pay taxes?
Yes, we need to do some improvements in national structures, such as implementing the national identity card system. That way we get many people to be properly identified. We need to work on issues such as banking and using banking facilities and going away from the cash economy that is affecting the tax base. We are looking at issues of informality, people really carrying out business in an informal way when they are huge and big. issues such as this one, where you don't issue a receipt when you should issue a receipt to account for the money you've collected. Those are the things around the tax structure.
Handshake deals.
Handshake deals. We need to work around those and ensure we get proper response to the existing tax structure.
Teachers want a pay rise. Why don't you give them, since you collect the money, you keep the bag?
We don't have enough. We would have wanted to give. We don't have enough as we speak now.
What do you mean? What should they do? They work for the government 100% of the time.
That's why we are saying support us.
I know they are the only employees who get about 4 months annual leave. Holidays on paper, at least. 4 months annual leave.
Yeah. But for us in the URA, we are saying if we can collect more, if we can get the people who are evading or non-complying,
then you can raise salaries.
Then we can talk about every other person's need. But if the cake we have to avail for cutting is small, then the demands may not be met as they've actually requested.
And you're saying the cake is likely to grow bigger when you find people, the pot-bellied men that I mentioned before and the Utoda men? The kit is going to grow.
The kit will grow.
How about this year, the targets for this year? Are we on course to achieve them?
Yes, we are on course. We've begun quite well. Of course, we haven't even finished the first year, but we are seeing that the initiative...
The first month,
the initiatives that we have begun are likely to give us some good results, and we pray that we don't get major shocks, and if that happens, we'll be on course to deliver the target that has been given to us.
About political backlash, you're following these men. Some of them are very well connected. Some of them voted wisely. Now you're following them. What if they begin to call you in the night and say, don't touch our people? What will you do?
I think we've gotten to a level where the leadership and the leadership in the country respects the national laws that have been passed by the Parliament of Uganda, and we really are not going to follow any person on a personal level.
Or not personal vendettas.
It's really the law, and we are saying, whether you're who or who, if you have a legal obligation to meet taxes, please pay it, and we'll actually let's meet in the courtrooms, but not use titles or connections here and there.
So URA has no personal vendetta with anyone?
No, not at all. We only are up to compliance to the law of tax.
Finally, maybe as we wind up, I met a man who was renting out his house, and he was quarreling and saying, URA, why do they want me to give them money? Where were they when I was making my money? How do you answer such a man? And you look like an educated man. I think he was a lecturer at one of the universities.
Yes. What we have to say is tax is made in such a way that as you earn, you actually contribute to the public goods. And it's not...
and government facilitated you in a certain way. They gave you roads, they gave you electricity.
They actually did that.
They gave you security as well.
They even gave you security as you proceeded to build that house. You remember days when you would start building a house and they come in the night
ask
and
you where
say,
you got the money.
Where did you get the money? They kill you, so you never even get to see a house past the foundation level. How government facilitated that is what should say. They were available even when you're building that house.
I know in those days most money used to end up in bars.
That is true, because
during
you never ever put up something tangible or visible.
I was in high school those days, and it was easy even for a student to actually go to the bar every day, because people would give you money knowing they can't save it, they can't invest it, because investing it would cause trouble
for them.
And Mr. Kajubi, finally we shall get a Utoda tax. We expect to have that coming very soon.
They will pay tax on their income.
And the pot-bellied men. We have to end here. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Moses Kajubi,
Thank you very much, and thank you, listeners.
Commissioner in charge of domestic taxes at the Uganda Revenue Authority. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Tisto. We'll be back with Spectrum. Will be back tomorrow. Up next, though, is the news in English.
Let's talk about the home of your dreams and how you plan to finance it. Let's discuss money, location, and time frames, and whether you plan to build it or purchase it or renovate it. Let's make it possible for you to get started now so that you get into your own home sooner.